All right, welcome to number 45. That's right, question 45. In this one, we're being asked to select all the following functions that have a 0 of -2. Now we've got our table here where we've got 5 different equations in there. Now let's go back to our question for a second. I want to take a look at this word right here, this phrase. It has a 0 of -2. Now what that means, that phrase has a 0. All of that's really telling us is that when we plug in -2 for each x that we see in each of our equations, we want our answer to be 0. Now that sounds pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and take a look at this for for number 1 here. Now I'm going to plug in -2 anywhere I've got an x. So I'm going to have -2 squared plus 5 times -2 plus 6. Now when I do that, you have to be really careful. Make sure when you evaluate that you do that correctly, because -2 squared is not -4. A lot of people think it is, but it's not. So make sure you evaluate that correctly. Plus 5 times -2, that'll just give us minus 10 and plus 6. When I'm all done with my arithmetic, f of -2 gives me a sum of 0. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have a function that was set equal to 0 anytime I'm going to plug in -2. So when I plugged -2 in anywhere there was an x, I ended up with 0. So I'm going to do that for each one of my problems. Now, problem number 1 was one of my possible solutions here. So that's one that's going to work. So this one definitely works. I'm going to go through and do that same process for questions 2, 3, 4, and 5, each one of those, and see which one of those give me an answer of 0 when I plug in -2. Let's take a look at the second piece of it right here. What I want you to do is go ahead and hit pause, come back, and see how you did just for number 2. How did you do? Hopefully, when you plugged in -2 everywhere there was an x for question or part number 2, you came up with -12. Now, -12 is not the same thing as 0, so question 2 is not going to be one of our options here. Now again, go ahead and hit pause. Do the same thing with example 3, where we have h of x equals 3/2 times the quantity x plus 2. Plug in -2 and see if you get 0 for an answer. How did you do with this one? Hopefully, when you plugged in -2, you came up with 3/2 times 0. And then, of course, anything times 0, because of the zero product property, anything times 0 gives you 0. So question 3 was another one that was a function that has a 0 at -2. Now again, we're going to go ahead, hit pause, try number 4, or just go ahead and do 4 and 5 at the same time and see what you come up with for your solutions when you substitute in -2 anywhere there's an x. Now hopefully you did your arithmetic correctly on this, and for equation number 4 you came up with k of -2 does equal 0, and for equation number 5 you came up with p of -2 equals -12. And one of the things I realize, most people probably just plug these into your calculator and try to evaluate it that way. So when you do plug it into the calculator, please make sure that you take your time and plug everything in correctly. Now let's go back and reread the question and make sure we find everything that we're going to do. It says select all the following functions that have a 0 of -2. And if I look at my answer choices, the only one that has equation number 1, 3, and 4 as my only solutions is answer choice C. So the correct answer to problem number 45 is C. Congratulations. I'm sure you got that one right.